he was another guy. I don't know when he butted heads with Supreme, but he was like other people, like he wasn't afraid of him.
There's only 4 that I know personally in Queens that wasn't scared of Preem. 50, E-MONEYBAGS, Homo, and Big Nose Troy. Between Big Nose Troy, Homo, E-Money, them terrorized the whole Queens.
Pretty Tony and Lance, Head Luke, Mel Son, Troy and E-MONEYBAGS.
Back in the day, the Supreme team was the most feared crew in Queens. With Kenneth Supreme McGriff running the show and rubbing shoulders with some of the biggest names in hip-hop, his crew was well feared. But even with all that weight, one guy stood out as a whole different kind of problem: Nose Big Troy.
He wasn't afraid of him, and he was strong enough and bad enough to, go up against him.
Nose Big Troy wasn't just another name in Queens. When it came to street notoriety, he was in a league of his own. Rolling with heavy hitters like Prodigy from Mobb Deep and E-MONEYBAGS, he supposedly got tangled up with the Supreme team over some snitching allegations. And from there, things escalated really fast. Now let's be real, the stories about the Supreme team aren't just rumors. They had Queens on lock for years, causing terror and fear all around. Even 50 Cent felt the heat when he took 9 bullets. And if that doesn't tell you how real it was, nothing will. But here's the thing. None of that shook Nose Big Troy, at least not at first. But trust, he eventually found out the hard way that no one walks away clean.
One night, they put it out that he's at the Van Wyck sports bar, and they just wait for him to walk out and pop him, and that's it, he's dead.
So how deep does this story really go? Let's get into it. When the crack epidemic hit in '84, places like Guy Brewer Boulevard and the Baisley Projects turned into cash machines for the Supreme team and other dealers. Buyers, both black and white, especially from the surrounding middle-class neighborhoods, flooded South Jamaica, desperate to get their hands on DS.
Yeah, mostly drugs probably, from what I see. But you have a little bit of everything: robbery, burglary, and just as you saw, stolen cars.
How bad is this place?
I'd say it's bad.
Back then, the biggest name on the scene was Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols.
There were several major organizations selling heroin in Southeast Queens, and one of them was Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols' organization.
Fat Cat wasn't some street kid from the jump. He grew up in a working-class household with a mom who was a nurse's aide and a dad who was a professional plumber. But he had the magic connection, a pipeline to an endless supply of allegedly thanks to his ties with the Italian mafia, and he was feeding the Supreme team heavy in the early '80s. Meanwhile, hip-hop was just starting to bubble into the mainstream. Right next to Supreme's stomping grounds in South Jamaica was Hollis, Queens, a place that was quickly becoming a hip-hop hotspot. That's where Run DMC, the first rap group to break big into the mainstream, came from. And if that wasn't enough, you also had Russell Simmons, Run's older brother, launching Def Jam Records from the neighborhood. And just down the block was a young LL Cool J was gearing up to take over the rap game. From the beginning, Queens D kingpins like Supreme and Fat Cat were rubbing shoulders with these rising rap stars, funding shows, paying for performances, and even supplying some artists with DS, either for their own use or to flip for extra cash. It wasn't just a business connection, it was a whole scene. Jam Master Jay, Run DMC's legendary DJ, even married the sister of James Wall Corley, who was tight with Supreme and Fat Cat's crew. When Fat Cat was indicted for deconspiracy in '85, the crew threw a massive send-off party where you could catch hip-hop pioneers like Curtis Blow and Busy B sharing the stage with Supreme's crew.
I want to make a special dedication to my man, my brother, who ain't with us right now. He listen, heart and mind. Fat Cat! Fat Cat!
By 1987, the Supreme team was at their peak, allegedly pulling in up to $200,000 a day. But that kind of money attracts serious heat. That year, the feds came down hard with an indictment. Somehow, Supreme McGriff only caught a light 10-year sentence, leaving his nephew, Gerald Prince Miller, to take over. But under Prince's leadership, things got a whole lot bloodier. The feds claimed the Supreme team was behind at least 8 murders in 1987 alone, although Supreme himself was never charged with any of them. By the end of the year, Prince got locked up too. And with both leaders off the streets, the Supreme team's reign was pretty much over, at least for the moment. While the Supreme team was cooling off, a crime rocked the neighborhood and sent shockwaves across the country. In 1988, rookie cop Edward Byrne was assassinated while sitting in his patrol car guarding the home of a witness involved in a D case. The hit was ordered by Pappy Mason, Fat Cat Nichols' top lieutenant, through his crew, the Bebos gang. After that, the NYPD flooded South Jamaica, cracking down hard on the D trade.
You can't kill a police officer and get away with it. That's why police react so quickly. You can't kill a police officer and get away with it.
A Queens grand jury is going to convene tomorrow to consider the case against 4 young men accused of executing rookie cop Edward Byrne. He was gunned down while guarding a witness in a drug case.
So when Prince got out in '89 and tried to revive the Supreme team, the clock was already ticking. Eventually, he and others were charged with a wild scheme where they allegedly lured 4 Colombian D suppliers to the Baisley projects, killed them, and stole their. The bodies were never found. While his old crew was getting picked off by law enforcement, Supreme was sitting relatively safe in federal prison, doing his 12-year stretch for D conspiracy. By the time he got out in '93, the streets of South Jamaica had changed. The golden age of D dealing was over. Most of the big players from the 80s were either dead or locked up, but a new hustle had taken over the neighborhood, one that was pulling in even more money than crack ever did: hip-hop. Supreme quickly aligned with Irv Gotti, whom he'd known before he got locked up. Well, things were going well for quite some time, but not until he crossed paths with Troy Singleton and E-MONEYBAGGS. Troy Singleton, better known as Big Nose Troy, was born in Queens in 1968. Different sources give mixed stories about his background, so pinning down the exact facts about him is tricky. Still, one thing's for sure: while he might not be as widely known as Supreme McGriff, 50 Cent, or Fat Cat, his name rang out heavy in the streets of New York. And unlike most, Troy wasn't scared of Supreme McGriff, the notorious leader of the Supreme team. Alongside 50 Cent and E-MONEYBAGGS, he was one of the few willing to stand up to him.
See, there's only 4 that I know personally in Queens that wasn't scared of Preem. 50, E-MONEYBAGGS, Homo, and Big Nose Troy.
What made Troy different from the old school street legends was simple: he didn't care about their reputation. While names like Supreme Prince and Fat Cat Nichols had the city on lock, Troy represented a new breed that wasn't about bowing down to anyone. Despite living with sickle cell anemia, a painful condition that would break most people, Troy kept it moving. In fact, his battle with the disease connected him with Prodigy from Mobb Deep, who had the same illness. Word is, when Prodigy was laid up in the hospital, Troy would come through with food from Red Lobster. Another person Troy rode with heavy was Eric Smith, better known as E-MONEYBAGGS, the same E-MONEYBAGGS who, back in '99, accidentally hit Supreme's right-hand man Black Just while aiming for Supreme outside Jamaica Coliseum Mall. Troy and E-MONEYBAGGS had been tight since their younger days, pulling off robberies and stick-ups around Jamaica, Queens. Over time, their beef with the Supreme team became serious, and let's just say, it didn't end well for either side. Now, if you know anything about E-MONEYBAGGS, you probably know why he hated the Supreme team. But if you don't, here's the backstory. Before Supreme got locked up for life, he was running a side hustle selling tagged, stolen cars through a woman named Z. When E decided to buy a car, he dropped a $1,000 payment through Z, but later he changed his mind and wanted to use that cash for a down payment on a new Lincoln Navigator. When he asked Supreme for a refund though, Supreme basically laughed him off and refused to give the money back.
Him and Supreme got into some sort of, argument over some money, over a car or something like that.
Over $1,000.
Over $1,000.
That disrespect sparked a legendary feud that eventually led to the accidental killing of Black Just in 1999.
E-MONEYBAGGS wanted to kill Supreme, so he pulled up on him and shot the car up, and it ended up Black Just.
For Big Nose Troy though, his issue with the Supreme team came from a different situation. It all kicked off in July of 1995 during the Peace Tournament, a basketball event held at Baisley Pond Park in South Jamaica, Queens. The tournament was supposed to honor 2 men killed by the police the year before, and with around 300 people watching from the Baisley Park projects, things seemed cool, until they weren't. About 5 minutes into the second half, gunshots rang out across the court. By the time the chaos settled, 2 people, Pierre Mitchell and Jamal Adams, were dead, and several others were injured. At first, the police struggled to figure out who was behind the shooting, but eventually Troy was picked out in a lineup at the 113th precinct and charged with second-degree murder. And here's the twist. Baisley Park was Supreme's home turf, so pulling a move like that in his backyard was not exactly the smartest play. The whole peace tournament shooting was detailed in Ethan Brown's 2010 book Queen's Reign Supreme, but not all the details about Troy's role came to light until later. Word on the street is that while Troy was being hauled in, a Supreme team member allegedly gave a statement against him. On top of that, there were rumors that James "Bimmy" Antony, another key figure, was ready to sign an affidavit and testify. Even though Bimmy never ended up on the witness stand and Troy walked free, he took the whole situation personally, feeling like the Supreme team was trying to set him up. Between E-Moneybags getting played over the car deal and the Supreme team's supposed attempt to pin the double homicide on Troy, the two decided there was only one thing left to do: declare all-out war on the Supreme team. And from that point on, things only got darker. If you were down with the Supreme team, you were automatically an enemy. That was the code Big Nose Troy and E-Moneybags lived by. The two of them roamed the streets of Queens like they had nothing to lose, pistol whipping, smacking, and roughing up anyone connected to Supreme's crew. And they weren't exactly subtle about it either. Word spread fast that these two weren't playing around, and everyone knew this street war was only going to end one way: in blood. Troy's hatred for Supreme and his people ran so deep that he took things to a whole new level. He wasn't just causing problems in the hood, he started pulling up on Supreme's guys in broad daylight. Record has it, he even caught a couple of them slipping outside the Universal Records office and slapped them senseless right there on Broadway, the busiest street in all of New York. But that wasn't enough for Troy. He wanted to hit Supreme where it really hurt, his beloved record label, Inc. During his rampage, Troy ran up on Ja Rule's manager, Ron Gutta Robinson, and reportedly smacked him around like it was nothing. And he didn't stop there. Around the same time, Troy and another street legend, Nathan Green-Eyed Born May, tracked down Irv Gotti, the head of Inc., and one of Supreme's closest allies, and gave him a beating he wouldn't forget. By 2001, Supreme had enough. Troy and E-Moneybags were messing with his business, his people, and his reputation, and something had to be done. According to court documents from his later trial, Supreme turned to Emmanuel "Dog" Mosley, a trusted member of his crew, and gave him a deadly task: find a crew of hitmen and take out both E-Moneybags and Big Nose Troy.
Supreme had assembled a team of guys, this guy Manny Mosley.
To sweeten the deal, Supreme allegedly put a $50,000 bounty on their heads. For Supreme, this wasn't just about business, it was personal. E-Moneybags had to go for killing Black Just, and Troy, well, Troy had been a thorn in his side since the peace tournament shooting and everything that followed. Dog didn't waste any time. He assembled a crew of killers and got to work. Unfortunately for E-Moneybags, he was the first target. In July 2001, he was ambushed and shot to death while sitting in his car.
There's basically E sitting in his truck, and you know, the family who's having a barbecue at this house, and they're bringing food back and forth, and he wasn't paying attention. She guided the hit team in to kill him.
Just 3 months later, on October 28th, they caught up with Troy. With the help of hitmen like Aaron Granson, Mosley's team found Troy outside a club on Liberty Avenue in South Jamaica. As he was heading back to his car, they let off 8 shots, leaving him no chance of survival.
One night, they put it out that he's at the Van Wyck sports bar, and they just wait for him to walk out and pop him, and that's it, he's dead.
Even after taking down Troy, the crew didn't stop. They kept hunting for Nathan Green-Eyed Born, but they never managed to find him. These back-to-back hits were a major part of why Supreme eventually found himself facing life behind bars. In 2007, he was sentenced to life in prison, a fate sealed by the testimony of his own crew, who flipped on him the moment they had the chance.
In 2007, Supreme ends up getting convicted in federal court of racketeering, for hire homicides, narcotics trafficking, engaging in illegal financial transactions with drug money, gets life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Despite his legal team's argument that Troy and E-Moneybags were legitimate threats to his life, the judge wasn't buying it. For a man who once ruled the streets of Queens with an iron fist, it was a harsh ending, rotting away in USP McCreary, a high-security prison in Kentucky. But here's the thing, no matter how it all ended, Troy's name still echoes through the streets. He's remembered as a real OG, a fearless figure who refused to bow down to anyone. His legacy lives on not just through stories, stories, but through his son, Troy Jr., who's carving out his own lane in the rap game. Even 50 Cent paid his respects. About a year before Troy's death, 50 name-dropped him on GHETTO QU'RAN with the line, "Coming up, I heard sipping too much booze will leave you confused, and if you watch the news, you see players in this game, they lose. I'm forgetting Lefty and Jazz, Pretty Tony and Lance Head Luke, Mel's son, Troy and E-MONEYBAGS."
Pretty Tony and Lance, Head Luke, Mel's son, Troy and E-MONEYBAGS.
Now, when 50 Cent dropped GHETTO QU'RAN, name-dropping Troy wasn't even the craziest part. He went all in on the Supreme team. And the whole thing? Yeah, it traced back to his beef with Murder Inc. It all started in 1999 when someone from 50's crew allegedly robbed Ja Rule in Queens. Ja was the face of Murder Inc., and 50 was still grinding for his spot. But some say the beef really kicked off over an awkward moment at a party. Even Chris Gotti, Irv's brother, said things got tense after 50 tried to greet Ja at a Murder Inc. after party, but Ja wasn't feeling it.
50 comes in the back, says what's up again, and I guess he didn't get enough conversation from Rule. Rule just said what's up and kept moving. I think he wanted to talk to him some more than he did or whatever, and was probably a little pissed off or something. And then that's shortly after that is when he started doing little mixtapes or underground records.
50, though, insists the robbery was the real reason and even claims he tried to squash the beef later, but Ja wasn't interested.
A friend of mine's robbed Ja Rule. And I'm in a club, and I see I'm like, hey, what's up? He see me kicking it with the robbed him, and he feel like, oh shit, I shouldn't speak to this dude because I know the kid robbed him, but I know this kid, I grew up with him.
From there, it was all-out war. Diss tracks, interviews, and real-life drama. Irv Gotti jumped in to protect his guy, doing everything he could to block 50's career, even admitting to blackballing him from major labels.
I blocked it until he fell into M and Dre's lap. Are you serious? Yeah, labels would call, I'd be like, yo, if you with him, I ain't with you. And they were like, we ain't with him then, Gotti, forget it.
But 50 didn't fold. He dropped hit after hit and became a global icon while Murder Inc. started to fade. Things hit a boiling point when both crews ended up in the same Atlanta hotel after a show. Ja, already sick of 50's constant shots, pulled up with a baseball bat, but 50 wasn't about to play nice. He sucker punched Ja. Chaos broke out, and the hotel turned into a full-on brawl. And depending on who you ask, someone even snatched a chain. But both sides tell it differently. But the real turning point? The infamous Hit Factory fight. This one got ugly. 50 ended up getting cut with a knife and the police got involved. Black Child, Inc. affiliate, got arrested, and things just got even messier from there. And while the Inc. beef was already wild, 50 had other problems too, especially after he dropped How to Rob in 1999. That track had him clowning the biggest names in hip-hop. Jay-Z, DMX, Big Pun, you name it. Some laughed, others were mad, but one thing was clear. 50 was here, and he wasn't about to let anyone forget it. And then came GHETTO QU'RAN, where 50 didn't just go after rappers. He called out real street legends like KENNETH, Supreme McGriff. In the track, he rapped, "Yo, when you hear talk of the South Side, you hear talk of the team. See feared Prince and respected Preemy for all you slow mother effers. I'ma break it down. Iller C, Preemy was the businessman and Prince was the killer.
Prince and respected Preem. For all you slow I'ma break it down. Iller. Supreme was the businessman and Prince was the killer."
Preem had deep ties to Inc. and even helped Ja Rule get his chain back. So when 50 exposed the Supreme team's history in GHETTO QU'RAN, things got serious. And in the streets, talking too much isn't just risky, it's deadly. On May 24th, 2000, that tension hit a breaking point when 50 was shot 9 times outside his grandmother's house. Somehow he survived, but instead of backing down, he doubled down.
It was real, like a real sneaky. He came around the back of the car, like he like this. He froze up, nigga. Nah, shut up. You ain't full up.
While Ja Rule and Irv Gotti were dominating the charts and blacklisting him from the industry, 50 was quietly plotting his comeback. During his recovery, he recorded Guess Who's Back, a project packed with raw energy and direct shots at the people who tried to take him out. Most thought he was finished, but then Eminem heard his music, and everything changed. By 2002, 50 was sitting with M and Dr. Dre in LA, and once Dre got involved, there was no stopping him. Looking back, it's crazy how things flipped. While Troy and E-MONEYBAGS fell to the streets and Supreme ended up with a life sentence, 50 turned the chaos into fuel and became one of the biggest icons in hip-hop. And while Troy Singleton's name might not be as famous, his story is a reminder of how loyalty, street politics, and ambition shaped a whole era in Queens, an era people won't soon forget.